The following content has been provided by RWTH Aachen University.
I want to cover a little more extended version of what that is, because what we do with brainstorming is that we enter a particular style of thinking, a very free-flowing, anything goes kind of style, very uncritical. And that's one way of thinking, but there are other styles of thinking that all have their value, but that we tend to not really differentiate much. When you think about a problem, normally, we try to do a lot of things at once. We try to be creative, but we also are critical. Emotion, information, logic, hope, creativity, all kind of get mixed together. When you do all these things at the same time, it's very hard to agree on something, especially in a group. So there's a technique called 6 hats thinking that instead tries to just map these things out one at a time. That maximizes your, the sensitivity, if you like, of your brain in that particular direction. So the idea of 6 hats is that everybody first does one style of thinking and then moves to the next style of thinking together. That always also helps reduce discussions and arguments in your design team. Everybody also has their own preferred style of thinking. You probably know that one person who's always very critical about anything you do, and then there's this other person who's always got great ideas and is like, very creative and very, not so critical. So that will depend on personality, training, professional background, your role, the situation that you're in. When people, that's basically great, but when people think in different styles at the same time, you're in for trouble. Then you've got, the one person who's like, oh, I've got all these wonderful ideas, and the other person's like, but that's a bad idea because, and that's a bad idea because of this, and so on. And that's not very productive. So the parallel thinking means that everybody thinks in the same style for a while in your group, and then you move to the next style of thinking to cover all those styles. I don't want to go into much more detail on this, but I'll give you a quick overview over the 6 thinking hats technique. It uses these ideas of you putting on a different hat for each type of thinking that you're supposed to be doing. And they're associated with colors because that helps you to remember them easily. So there's the white hat that is the hat that is about objective facts and figures, so very, very sort of objective, reminding you of maybe paper as the material of objective information. Then there is the red hat, which is about your intuition, gut feeling, emotion. So if you can't really place it, but you have the hunch that a particular interface idea is a bad idea, that's where this would go. Associated with blood, for show. Then you have the serious black hat, which is the cautious, critical one. I think Germans are born with a black hat on their head. We're really good at being very critical and cautious about everything. I see that all the time. Very different, for example, if you move to the US, there's a generally slightly more sunny sort of fundamental way of tackling life. But so if you put up this on the sunny yellow hat, that's about like the hopes, the benefits you see in a project, what could this system do for people, it's the positive thinking approach. Associated with that is the green sort of hat of growing grass. That's about creativity and new ideas. So that would be your brainstorming hat, right? That you'll be wearing. This would be where you do brainstorming. And then there is the meta hat, so the blue sky hat, which is basically the one that organizes on a meta level the other things that are going on. That would be the hat that the person who is organizing a meeting, for example, would be wearing most of the time. So when you use this, you can see that the different hats simply refer to thinking styles, right? Not to people, right? So you'd say something like, that was good black hat thinking, thanks for the critical comment here and pointing it out. Now let's all put on the yellow hat and look for some positive impacts of our project. You don't say things like, oh, you're too critical, you're a black hat, you should see the benefits of this. That's not good style. You can use this in different ways. You could say there's a preset sequence in which we're going to run our meeting. We're going to have a brainstorming meeting, but before that we're going to have, wearing a green hat, so to say. But before that we're going to do, and after that we're going to have different sessions of our meetings. Or you can just let it evolve on the fly if you're an experienced meeting manager. Here's the sample sequence and some guidelines on this. it makes sense to just have the moderator trigger the changes of hats, have only a short time, maybe 1 minute per participant and hat, extend when things come up, not to limit creativity. And the red hat is a tricky one, the intuition sort of gut feeling one. That one shouldn't be rolled out too much, otherwise it just gets into a very unproductive meeting. So here's an example. You get together to plan your project a little further, to collect some ideas. So one person is wearing the blue hat, organizes the meeting, says, everybody, if you have a strong pre-existing feeling about the project, or how we're currently approaching it, about the team, anything, let that get out there now. Let's discuss it with the red hat on. After that, we move on to the white hat. We bring everybody up to date with any information that we've researched, that anybody has found. For example, you might be designing a system, I don't know, for healthcare, and you found some data on healthcare statistics. Then you put on sort of the yellow hat to point on the positive aspects of the potential of your project. The green hat goes on for a round of brainstorming, and then the black hat goes in and takes the ideas from the brainstorming and looks at them critically to filter out the best ones. Then the white hat assesses this against the existing information, very objectively again, and the blue one concludes and summarizes with the meta function of organizing it. And then if you want, you can have a red hat close-up where you reflect on how the meeting went, how people, from an intuitive point of view, felt that the whole thing worked out. So, six-hat thinking. There's a whole book on the topic that I encourage you to take up and take a read on if you're interested more in this area. It's a way to move sort of beyond just brainstorming, and in general, even if you don't apply the six thinking hats technique, remember that it sometimes might make sense in a meeting when you have to design a project to simply make sure everybody thinks in one direction for one moment, wearing the whatever critical hat and then wearing the positive one, so that you just point out that these are different approaches to the problem. They're all valuable, but they all have their time and place.
This content was provided by RWTH Aachen University.